Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 193 of the Nope Coach podcast. Where'd you park your spaceship? So I am welcoming special guest Rob Bell today, who has written a book, Where Did You Park Your Spaceship, by this very name. And the first thing I want to say, before anything else, hats off to you, Rob, for making a book with text big enough for those of us who are fighting that we need bifocals. I was like, I can open this up and I don't need my other glasses. So that was an unexpected surprise when this book arrived.
Good. That was my intent, that you would open up the book and think you could actually read it. It's always a bonus.
So I've read many of your other books. I loved how you referenced a lot of them in this one. But it's very different to your other style. So I don't even know where to start.
I'm not aware that I've referenced.
You talked about What's a Knucker, like your play, and then you talk about Zim Zum. And I know you've got a book by that title as well.
Yeah. And that was actually a huge moment in writing when the character Nord writes a play, and I was like, oh, what should the play be? And all of a sudden I was like, wait, what if he wrote a play called What's a Knucker, which is a play I wrote, which I published. And it was like one of those moments of permission giving where you're like, all the cool kids are rolling their eyes right now. Like, oh God, seriously, Rob, you're going to have a character write a play that is a play that actually exists. But it was like that, almost like a earnest, sincere space sort of kept opening up within me, like, but this is how I write a book about spaceships. Like, this is how I do it. You know what I mean? Like, yes. But this is how I do it. And this is all I got. That's the only thing I know how to do is how I do it. So What's a Knucker it is. A play within a book.
I loved that. And a few other times that you reference things, I loved how you dropped a reference to Tasmanian blue gums in another planet. And, I'm actually from Tasmania. So I was like, oh, yay. And something else you mentioned, I can't remember his name. I'm not good with names, but the guy who climbed Everest, like without an oxygen tank.
Yeah, Goran Kropp.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I was like, it's funny that in a fiction book, in a place that doesn't exist, the links to things that are like the turmeric for depression, rosemary for bad memory. I was like, there's so many layers to this story.
I am so struck with how this entire world that's created some other time, some other place, all of the interviews, everybody wants to talk about love, loss, grief, hope, ecology, governance, turmeric, rosemary. You create a complete bread. You create an imaginary world of a story that literally involves people flying around planets on spaceships, and yet somehow we all connect to who we are here and now in our hearts, like immediately through a story.
Yes.
This has been absolutely like a whole other world. Well, like it is a whole other world, but compared to the other books, this has been such an incredible experience.
For me, and I'm curious for your take on this, because it's, literally otherworldly, it's almost like there's this permission, unwritten permission, to explore themes that we wouldn't if it was set in a regular day-to-day. Like the big things I took from it, and everybody who listens to the show, if you've listened to one of my previous episodes, my mum has just recently passed in the last few days, and you spoke about ungrieved grief. And I was just like, yeah, like in a space that's not directly related to it, that we can touch it. Whereas when it's, right in front of you, it feels like it's too much. Just like, kind of come in sideways. It's kind of like how you hide medicine in food for kids or something, or vegetables, I should say. Like, you kind of whiz it up, and in here, in the bolognese is all the veggies in the sauce, but they don't know. And I just felt reading the book, and I reread it in the last couple of days because I knew we were going to be chatting. It landed very differently being freshly grieving as opposed to when I read it when it first came out in August. I think it was August.
Yeah, in the writing of it, there was one note from a friend who was like, you could write the book in such a way that we get right to the action. Because when Nunez shows up, the the assassin shows up, it's like, then you're like, oh, game on. And a couple friends noted, it feels like that's when the story, like the action kicks in. But I had this like deep intuitive sense, we have to go with Keen, the main character, from early on and see what he goes through, because there's a feeling here when he realizes he's been numb for decades because of his grief, and he's starting
Yes.
to feel again. And I also loved that when he starts to feel again, he doesn't feel like joyous tingles of universal love. He feels like supernatural annoyance at this guy named Joe Tudd. So I love that he's like, wait, he's realizing he's been numb and he's starting to feel, but he's not feeling. So, but it was like, oh no, we have to have been with Heen long enough that we feel what ungrieved grief. It's like, it's almost like there's the black etchings on the page and there's the white space around the page where you find yourself at some level.
And I think that is not stated in a lot of works. Like, we want to get to the action, we want to get to, oh, this is the good bit, or this is the thing, but without the context of what's led up to this. And I laughed so hard when you labeled Nunez as the creative director. It's like, what even is that? Nobody knows. It's like, whenever I hear that title, that's what I think. It's like, what do they do? I don't know.
That's all the fun of just being surprised in the writing with all these weird, in the States we would call it inside baseball, like just weird like jokes that who even knows what the heck.
I
So
loved
fun.
that. And my
Like,
other
oh,
favorite
God.
character, I can't remember their name now, but when Heen goes to play the sport and there's a
Yes.
lady lying in the field and he's like, well, I'm going to tell
Yes.
this old
Oh, this
person to
is
like
so
get out of the
awkward.
way.
Right.
And then not only is she like the captain, but she's like really fit. I was like, how often have we done that? We've been like, oh, this person. And then we're like, they've just like absolutely floored us. And then she just gives him a name like Silencio, because he couldn't talk at that stage. And I was just like, and just the warmth, like for me reading that part, it feels like coming back to when he was a child again and he was welcomed into that family without any context. And then it's another moment of that to allow that in after so long of being alone.
See, I never made that. Yeah. See, this is so fun to talk about. Is everybody, I swear to you, every interview, there's multiple things somebody says, and I'm like, never saw that. Fantastic.
And you wrote it.
Love it.
And the other question I asked, it says book 1. Is there more coming, or you don't know yet?
Well, I've always had sort of my own way of doing things, which is don't talk publicly about anything you're working on. I've always just wanted to be somebody who finishes things and really puts them out. But then I was like, God, if you put book 1 on the front, you're kind of, but yeah, but that's part of, actually, that was part of the whole thing, is as soon as I started feeling the story right away, there was a number of things where I was like, well, we're going to have to get that, and we're going to have to go over there. And I was like, oh, that's book 2. And I'd be like, wait, book 2? So, oh, book 3? Wait, what? So there's a whole galaxy here that we're going to need to spend some time in the future.
But I love that permission to self to be like, I don't know where this is going to go yet, but I'm just going to put this on here and see. Because I think so many of us, everything is structured, like, and if we don't do it in this exact way, then people can feel unsettled or whatever. But it's like, no, this is following my own intuition, creative genius, what feels good for me. And I love how you model that.
That's all we have. That's all. That's being responsible to yourself.
Yeah.
Is listening, and there's a deep knowing we all possess, and then you have people around you who know you and love you in such a way that they can hold up mirrors to help you when you need just to talk out loud and say certain things and have somebody reflect it back. And yeah, that's how it works at some level. It's quite thrilling, actually. And then you get used to the terror. You know? Like you get used to, and then all those questions: how am I going to pay the bills? What are people going to think? All those questions just become fine. You treat all that stuff that arises. It's like you practice self-inquiry. The thought arises, that anxious, that stress-inducing, what about, and you just, there's that one again. There's the bills. How are we going to pay the bill? Oh, there it is. Hey, sweetheart, there you are. Just reminding me that we got to keep the lights on. Okay. It's like you're kind to yourself, and you're kind to that voice, and over time, it just gets more interesting.
It reminds me of one of your podcast episodes. I can't remember which one, but you said when you catch that, this is me paraphrasing, when you catch that moment, that terror, that panic, that what if this is going to happen, or what if that's going to happen, and you're like really riding this, or you'd be like, it's a Tuesday. You're just bringing it back to what actually is happening, because sometimes we get so future focused or so past focused that we're not actually here. And I just remember you saying that in one of your episodes once, and whenever I catch that moment, like, well, this could happen, or that could happen, or this could happen, and it's like, hang on, it's a whatever day of the week it is, and it's just, I don't know, I find that really calming.
The mind is a wonderful servant. It's not the best master. Like, you think about from an early age, the stove is hot, a knife is sharp. Like, these threat detection systems kept us alive. Like, so there's a great deal of gratitude we have towards how the mind is constantly playing out scenarios. It runs up ahead in the road to find out if there's a lion in the bushes. That keeps us aware, and it protects us, but it also, the mind can easily spend all of its time not in the present moment.
Yes. And I think
it's like learning to allow the mind to report to the center of the being, which is sometimes called the heart, body, soul, spirit, the center, which can only ever be here.
Yeah. I think you talk a lot to that in the book too. Like, when he later on in the story, like in the beginning, he has his early childhood, and then he has, the event that happens. So I don't want to give it away for anyone who hasn't read it yet. And then he just tends to follow along. Like, he ends up very much in the present moment. Here I am in this bakery. Oh, go to this job interview. Oh, okay. And he follows along. And how much of his life has passed, like lapse years, you reference in the book, until he touches it again, like actually questioning, why am I doing this? And, where is my life going? Like, I'm just going from place to place. And I think many of us do that. We do the things, we tick the boxes that, are expected of us, but we never actually pause to go, is this what I actually wanted to do? And that's why I loved, he's like, I'm just going to go and play sport. I haven't done this in like 25 laps or however long he says in the book, but, here at him, that childlike sense of being in the present that many of us lose.
Yeah. And I love how he has these moments where he thinks he might be like his job, he's a Series 5. He thinks he might be the best Series 5 of the universe. He's like, I look at these other people who do what I do. God, these chumps. I'm so much better at this. But then he starts to realize, oh, actually, the reason I'm really good at my job is that I'm kind of numb, and that might not be a good thing. It's like it's dawning on him. The reason why he may be really good at this isn't that good of a reason.
Yes.
It's like he's just been on to the next planet, file the next report. Like, he's been like almost like a trance, and then suddenly on this one planet, he's like, it's almost like he's going, is it me? Is this am I waking up, or is this planet different? It's like you could never really tell. You're like, because as the reader, at least as it's unfolding, I was like, oh, this is interesting. Is Furtus actually different than all the other planets? It's important we haven't been to those planets so that we have this weird thing happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
Is
hadn't made
Furtus
that connection.
actually
Is it
different?
different, or was he actually waking up so he noticed it then?
Right. So you think about, like listeners to your podcast, like think about the moments in our life when suddenly we see things in a new way. And we're like, well, it's because of that dramatic event. But think of how many great breakthroughs weren't a dramatic event. They were just like a Tuesday, like you said. Like,
Yes.
so human consciousness is very mysterious in the sense of, why do we see things when we see them? Or you think about two friends who go to university together and have very similar perspectives on life. That's why they're such good friends. And then they go out into the world and they meet up 10 years later, and it's like the one is still telling the same story. Remember that time when they're like, and the other one has just like rocketed into new wide open spaces. You're like, why did the one person have curiosity, exploration, growth, expansion, and the others like kind of where they were?
Oh,
I mean, that's
love
just
that.
this great question, just fascinating. Yeah, question at the heart of the human experience.
That's got me thinking, but I'll pause that and finish this episode and bring it into another one. Thank you so much for joining me, Rob. What do you do for the listeners, and where can they find you and your book?
The book is called Where'd You Park Your Spaceship? And all sorts of things that I'm up to are at my site, which is robbell.com.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.